nonetheless, taking the position and traveling later, like when the three of us met, this is something that I will forever tell. We were, Tanya and me are poets invited from the United States. So there is Tanya as an American poet, and there is me as an American poet, and there is Tara as an American poet. And the only American poet that you would expect and guess that is an American poet, blonde, tall, beautiful like Tara is not living in the United States. We were three immigrant poets, including the American poet was an immigrant American poet. And there was this time when we came into a restaurant and we were the three of us walking together, and they say, "Hey, here come the Americans." And I looked at them and I said, it's the first time in my life that someone looked at me and say, "Hey, here comes the American." Right? Nonetheless, we are, because somehow the three of us are experiencing immigration. The three of us are experiencing living in two languages, in two different worlds at the same time. And I think that the way that we encounter this in our daily life, we daily live between two languages. We daily live, and in language is everything for us because we're poets. So we live between these two worlds that are one in our heart. And I think that is what made us so close. We are sharing an experience. We are immigrant poets, the three of us.
That's great. That's a great line also. And when just one more question to the poet laureate, when you said how much is it based to a city, or how much is it also like a function in a city, or a
yes.
decision of a city?
There are several functions. These changes from city to city and from state to state. They have different budgets and different commissions. In the case of Cincinnati, it is also a community building role. So I work with a lot of nonprofits, trying to bring poetry and poetry expression to people. Like I organize poetry readings in laundromats, in parking lots, like in non-traditional venues, not always in a library, not always in a bookstore, but trying to take the poetry where the people are. And also sometimes we get the commission to represent the city for something. So I had a really hard commission, which was writing a poem about the Holocaust for the inauguration of a Holocaust museum in Cincinnati. It's a very difficult subject to talk about, or writing about the universe for the Symphonic Orchestra of Cincinnati that was making a concert about stars and everything. But the thing that I enjoy the most is to be able to represent a lot of people that maybe does not necessarily look like me, but that love poetry just like me, because that is what defines me. The fact that I define myself as a poet before anything else is what makes these friendships possible.
Yeah.
When you find another poet from a different region in the world, etc., you find a new old friend because you are alike to that person in the core. And that's what is important.
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, can I ask Tanya, because I know you live in Los Angeles now, and just what Manuel said about reading in laundromats and stuff. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the scene in LA, but when I lived in Los Angeles, one of my favorite poets was also Korean-American Chi-Won Choi.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
You know Chi-Won? He used to run these things with Jessica, I can't pronounce her second name. It's a Spanish name, and I'm frightened Manuel is going to criticize me for this, but I think it's Jessica Chabalos or Chabeos or something. But they used to do readings in Grand Central. They did readings in laundromats, and it was a brilliant community for me as an immigrant in America, like an Irishman in America, to suddenly be accepted.
Chi-Won did it like a lot of like at the time the ghost reading, and then he was going to different places and then burning the like the poems and stuff like that. So he did a lot of the performance poetry. Yeah. And LA is like really big in poetry community. But Korean was like my first language, and then I become a poet in Korean. And among immigrant poets, I think it is just like a segregation is so hard because of the barrier of the language. Jiwon came here like when he was 5 years old. So he is he's writing in English, and then but what I was associated with so many first generation Korean writers. So even today they're like just writing only in Korean, and then they have so many different groups, but then they cannot not overcome with like American poets and not associate with the American poets because of the barrier of the language. And then so it's so segregation. So it's just really hard among poets if you don't know the language. And then we call diaspora. And Manuel and I are like, sort of like we have to make our way. We got to make our way to pave in, If I didn't write in English, I would have been never, I don't know, invited to, the International Poetry Festival, or cannot be friends with Tara and Manuel because we have like some kind of connections.
And that would be sad.
Experiences, same thing. And even though we know, even though there was 30, 40 poets, but we're clicked together. The reason was because we experienced, and then America, that's like our homeland right now. So, and then we have experienced certain same thing. But people who immigrants who living in same routine, they're work, go home, and like a church or whatever. They don't have a time to experience outside of their comfort zone. That is really hard. And also as writing as a two different language, I think I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like it's so overwhelmed because I have to explain so hard myself. The reason is because, okay, one way in Korean, I have to explain myself this way. But then if I exactly explain myself in English, I can't explain, that's not get it. So then I have to change my language to explain attitude and then all that kind of stuff, gestures to English. And then I feel like I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm torn, one to another one. And even the concept of that is not you supposed to feel in Korean as a Korean woman. And then switch it in American culture. Why you have to feel that way? You shouldn't feel that way. I mean, so talking about it, diaspora is coming out, and then it was a long journey, but I was even so surprised. What was surprised was my book got published in Korean poetry in 2015 in Korea. And that was all Korean poems. And then it was it kind of lost it because I am here. Who's going to read, Korean American poets wrote in Korean? But I didn't even know, but Korean translation in Korea. So government sponsored to pick 25 books written by Korean diaspora. And then they pick these 25 books, and if you read the books and then write a book review contest, you could on the contest. But did they notify me that my book is selected? No, I didn't know. Somebody have to text me. But it was amazing. So now that diaspora is a big thing, and I think I feel we're a poet as a diaspora. I think we are everybody living in on island, and then somebody said that reading my poetry feel like I'm living in my own geography. But for saying that, can I share one of my poems, just exactly what I said? It's a gap. I just wanted to share this poem, so short, but it's in two different language. And then it's it's gonna be sum up like what I say, because being two people in one body would be just exactly or sum up. The reason is because when I wrote this poem, I think this is actually my first English poem that I wrote it. So then when I wrote it, I was like, ooh, I kind of like this visualizing. So I wanted to make a triangle. So I tried to make all the triangle in this poem, each stanza. And then I said, okay, let me translate in Korean. And then I wanted to make the same triangle. And then when I made a triangle, tried to make the triangle in Korean, it cannot be triangle. It's going to be upside down triangle. So it just like explain just one body. I don't know, Manuel, do you feel same way? Like it just totally different way of thinking, different mind, even though just like writing, tone of the voice. And it's just like totally different. So like that, it could be beauty of the language, complex of the language, and then changes your mind, thoughts, feelings. So I'm going to just read it really quick. The gap between Hyune and Tanya. Hyune is my Korean name. See, now like when you call me Hyune, I'll be totally change my attitude. Gap between Seoul and Los Angeles. Gap between rice and bread. Gap between kimchi and salad. Gap between my natural skin and my covered skin. Gap between my mother tongue and my second language. Gap between my inherited blood and my transmitted blood. The gap between me and my other self. The gap, 현애와 타냐, 그 사이의 gap. 서울과 로스앤젤레스, 그 사이의 갭, 밥과 빵, 그 사이의 갭, 김치와 샐러드, 그 사이의 갭, 내 살과 덧붙인 겉살, 그 사이의 갭, 모국어와 제2국어, 그 사이의 갭, 타고난 피와 수혈된 피, 그 사이의 갭, 나와 또 다른 하나의 나, 그 사이의 갭. Thank you.
Beautiful, yeah. I mean, it's also like for exactly for those technical setting, the Zoom is always a bit crappy if we clap. You know, it's a bit disturbing. But it's good that we have this place here is a bit symbolizing also like the art of waving, because after 10 o'clock we don't wave our hands here in this place, and we only wave our hands, not clap, because we have neighbors right up door. And so we have like 20 years of tradition waving. And now finally in the year 2020, we understood we're just preparing for this kind of phase of giving gratitude and exactly, and thank yous by the hand, basically. And that's it's great to give to get a sense for the Korean language and the Korean poetic language. And the question is if we just keep on with a bit of the poetic music and in more languages, maybe. I don't know. Is Manuel? Would you be willing or ready to just read a poem?
Yes, and I wanted to talk about this idea of immigration that we have, because I think that for the three of us, I don't know if for the three of us, but at least in my case, and I am sure that it kind of happens like that for the three of us, we have also made a home where we are at. Mm-hmm. Like what happens to me now when I go back to Mexico is that I feel at home in Mexico, but I miss my friends here. And I miss the things that I have here. My daughter was born here and she has a life here, you know, and here I have so many connections. Deep, there are places we never inhabit a city. We inhabit certain coffee shops. We inhabit certain libraries. We inhabit certain streets. And some of those streets that are dear to me are now Cincinnati streets. And when I go home, however, when I'm in Cincinnati, I miss not being different, for example. I love when I go to Mexico and I speak and I have no accent. I love when nobody puts the word Mexican in front of my name to define me as a poet. I love to just blend in, which does not happen in Cincinnati. However, when I'm here, is where I have all of this. So I am always missing one of the places whenever I am in either of the places. So I do feel that I am a poet with two homes that does not get to be in both at the same time, like anybody. I don't feel this terrible detachment from the place where I live. I am not a suffering immigrant. I am not an immigrant that is always longing to go back. Also because I know that it's impossible to go back somehow. So I wrote this poem that is called I Am From Here. I'm going to read it in English and then in Spanish. I am from here. One is from the places that he has arrived, from the language in which he cannot dream, and one day it happens, and he wakes up wondering which one is now his house, when there is always a heart elsewhere. One comes from the streets that never are the same when he returns. One comes from the moment in which he decided to leave, and from that other one in which he realizes that everything departs, that it's impossible to stay, even if you stay. That it's impossible, even if you go back, to be back. I write a verse that is like a farewell and point at it. I am from here. Soy de aquí. Uno es de los sitios a los que ha llegado, del idioma en el que no puede soñar, y un día sucede y se despierta preguntándose cuál es su casa ahora, cuando siempre hay corazón en otra parte. Uno proviene de las calles que ya nunca son las mismas al volver. Proviene del momento en el que decidió partir y de ese otro en el que entiende que todo se aleja, que es imposible quedarse aunque te quedes, que es imposible aunque regresar. Escribo un verso que es como una despedida y lo señalo. Soy de aquí. So that is my poem as an immigrant. Thank you, guys.
Muy elegante.
Gracias.
Muy
bonito.
Muy bonito.
Muchas gracias.
Qué fuerte, ¿eh?
De nada.
And something that I wanted to say, I liked it in Spanish, but every time I try to speak Spanish now, Romanian comes out.
Yes.
Whoa.
It's the thing that happens with second and third languages, where if you're, I think they're in the same pocket of the brain, but I used to be able to speak Spanish. I studied Spanish, and now I can read it. I can listen to it. But
they are similar languages. They are Romance languages, both. So they are together.
Yeah, that's why I've been able to teach myself what I know of Romanian, because of learning Spanish. But Romanian is very tricky. It has, I can't establish the patterns the way I can in Spanish. There are so many exceptions. It's quite a wonderful challenge to learn.
It sounds like English.
Except for it's
so many exceptions. It's so tricky.
I think the main difference is if you hear a word in Romanian, you know how to spell it. In English, not so much. When you're talking about where we're from, where are you from is a question that I get every time I leave the house and someone hears me speak in Bucharest. It's happened to me every day I've left the house for now almost 6 years, except for during the pandemic when we were in lockdown. I didn't hear that question for like 3 months. And I have this tiny little poem. And while you were talking, Manuel, I thought I should just read them this poem as an answer, or I can read them part of what you told me recently. We were having a conversation recently, and I think, is this in a poem of yours where you come from your father's heart?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is that?
It's a poem for Olivia. If someone asks you where are you from, tell them that you came from your father's heart. I'm telling that to my daughter. Yeah.
And when you told me that, I thought I should just start telling cab drivers that I come from my father's heart.
Tara, I just have my best friend in Ireland, Stephen Murray, another poet. His 6-year-old daughter said, "Daddy, where did I come from?" And he said, "Beer." Just yesterday, I got that text message. Sorry to interrupt you.
She's gonna tell people.
I had so many big questions. Like, so
I'm gonna abuse myself because I'm laughing. Wait.
Sorry, Tara.
No, it's okay. I used to say, I am from heaven. That's what I say. Used to say, like I used to say, I'm from heaven. Can you tell?
Oh, don't mute yourself laughing. We love laughing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a poet and festival director in Croatia when one day we were walking around and we sat on a park bench, and she was showing me this app she used for running. And she said something like, I'm always, checking this now so I can see where I was. And I have this little poem called Two Way that could answer that question. If I don't feel like using your poem, Two Way, I'm always sending myself where I am now so I can see where I was later. Being here, the experience of, first of all, most people speak English. So I'm not in the state every day of needing to speak another language. And actually, when I do try to speak Romanian, people speak English back to me. But I am learning. And when I lived in the Transylvania region in Brașov for my Fulbright, sometimes I would go to the store and, like a pharmacy, and I would be speaking Romanian and I would express myself, and then I would hit a certain moment where I didn't know the word. And I knew how to say literally, I don't have the word. So I would say, nu am cuvinte, I don't have the word. And every time I said this, the person I said it to would just look at me like, I had no idea. But for a year and a half, nobody corrected me. I was going around telling everybody, I'm sorry, I'm speechless. Because I don't know, am cuvinte actually means I'm speechless. So I'd be like, I need some Advil and some, Allegra, and they don't have Allegra here. And I'm sorry, I'm speechless. And to be speechless is how I feel every time I write a poem, because every poem really is a new language. And beginning a new poem is like entering into a new language. You don't know it, and you have to learn it as you write. And I felt this a lot while, this distance of writing a poem. And at the same time, while I was here, I'm watching from a distance democracy in danger in my country from a screen in Romania. And I can't march, but I can write, and I can use a screen. And I remember being in my kitchen when Trump was inaugurated, and I hadn't written in a while, and I had to write a poem. It was the only thing I could do. And so I had recently visited this, it's a former prison, one of the scariest former prisons during communism in Romania. It's in northern Romania, and now it is. It has a very long name, so this poem has like the longest title ever. The title really is long, 2 lines, but it's mostly the name, the name of the memorial. And on Inauguration Day, I kept thinking about this prison turned memorial that you go through, and you can go into all of the cells, and they've curated it in a way where you have, there was even a poetry room. There was a poetry cell. So I was thinking about this visit during Inauguration Day, and then I wrote this poem. On Inauguration Day, it has 2 little lines from Hamlet, and I cannot take credit for that. On Inauguration Day, I remember a visit to the memorial of the victims of communism and of the resistance. Behind the glass, a bloodied roll of gauze unravels poetry, stitched with wires shed from a broom. Alone in a cell, a man would slap Morse code onto his thigh, feeding possibility to the other men in the block. I walk into Iuliu Maniu's death cell. On the floor, a dented aluminum bowl and spoon, empty bucket, cup, cot without a mattress, striped uniform draped at the foot. One cell is now the poetry room, Morse crackling through the speakers, photographs of anonymous wall poems. I will die without knowing, without dying. The man who stitched poetry in code was condemned to death for trying to get medical attention for a fugitive wanted by the Securitate. Where? Who? Why? I think of my sister on another continent, 5 years in America's largest women's maximum security for resisting arrest with nonviolence as a teenager. Another 2 years for another minor offense. Now a motherless mother with a motherless child. I enter the black cell, really a torture room. Shackles anchored to the stone floor of a shoebox room without windows. Everyone else who reads the placard at the door keeps walking. Madness in great ones must not, unwatched, go. In a women's prison outside Boston, one of my best college students, thrown into solitary for weeks, managed to write a paper diagnosing Hamlet's madness in a hole meant to drive her mad, and turned it in on time. The virtue of will. Make the mad guilty and appall the free. No one stops me as I leave the room. In the courtyard, a grassy hill bearing citrus covers a domed memorial. I enter through its concrete door. A round stone table like a retina. Its surface, water. Beeswax candles lit in memory of someone, of someone's someone. Flame toward an open cross in the ceiling. It's starting to rain. Drops tap the table. I am becoming aware that I might be falling into a love beyond the limits of restraint. I know without knowing. 12 lit candles light the water table. I've been here alone so long, I've lit at least half of them. For no one in particular. For you, and you, and you.
It's a long pause after a long title.
And one of the longest poems I've ever written.
Yeah. Is it that you always remember the title in full sentence?
What do you mean? I don't know. Well, I usually remember my titles. They're usually short. That's the longest one ever. But it's actually the Memorial of the Victims of Communism and of the Resistance. That's what it's called.
But you had to read it now. You were looking like it.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Well, I also don't have most of my own poems memorized.
Okay, that's nice. They're always kind of fresh.
Yeah.
It's good, actually. I think that's they're both. I think that's also interesting to see. Or do you memorize them, or do you always freshly read them? I think it's an interesting kind of attitude.
It's a tricky thing. You know, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is from Lloyd Schwartz. He gives me lots of best pieces of advice. Lloyd Schwartz, he told me, I'm going to bump another piece of advice up. He told me to always read a poem as if I'm experiencing it for the first time. And also he told me to read the poem, because we work on so many drafts that sometimes your brain remembers something from a previous draft.
Yes.
It will just pop into your mind when you're reading.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah. Or say you're stressed, or say, anything. So no matter what, I always read, even if I have it memorized. But most of the time I don't actually have the whole shape memorized, the lines sometimes. What about you guys?
The same happens to me.
Yeah. And especially like that, like I wrote like a Comfort Women, especially that poem. It is like the poem is about the sexual slavery during World War II. So it is like a long poem. And then sometimes, a lot of times I know that like I get choked. So I prepare myself because it's live. I'm not going to cry. But somehow, I don't know what it is. It's just like something, the spirit or whatever what I'm reading, it happens. And then even though just one word, just gas and then feel through my body, and then I get choked. And then I don't apologize. I don't apologize for like me being choked, and then I had to stop and take a breath or take a, water to stop it. And I think it is important as poet and you're reading it, and it is a new experience. It's a new poem. At that moment when you're reading, that poem is totally another poem. It is not the same poem that you read it yesterday, because your experience, your spirit in that poem is just different. I think it just poem is alive, don't you think? That's why like we're reading like, poets like who live in 100 years ago, just like the May 31st, Walt Whitman's like birthday. So a lot of poets who got together on June with like 3 hours, like nonstop. We're reading like his 52 poems, and something happened. You know what happened? It's like the next day, I was like just so happy, and then I'm just like celebrating myself, and they're writing a poem. So like, I don't know, like it just poetry is totally different gifts that we have, and then we must share. I think that this is very important.
Neil shares yours. You memorize and you perform.
Yeah.
Like I don't know anyone who does it just like you.
I do. There's a few, but it's not. I mean, when I perform poems, actually speaking of Romania, I think it was in Cluj-Napoca, an Insomnia Cafe. I did like a 2-hour recital from memory. And then they had a question and answers afterwards, and they passed a cordless microphone around, and it came to one serious scholar, face like 1,000 cigarettes. And he just said, "You're more like a stand-up comedian, not really a poet. What do you say to that?" And I said, let's step outside. But I said it in a kind of a funny way, and we had a beer afterwards. But I only come from a different tradition, a different culture. And in Ireland, it's a very oral culture. It's been that way for 1,000 years, where we go to pubs, we lock ourselves in to keep the police out, and we entertain ourselves with stories. And that's where I come from. And you feed off the energy of an audience. And it's exactly like Manuel just mentioned, like, or sorry, Tara, you just mentioned too, it's like reading from a script. You remember something from a previous draft. I get the same thing by looking at people's faces. Like, Dominic might snigger at something, and suddenly I thought, oh, I've just remembered a line which I need to bring into the poem, or a different way of stressing this. And also for foreign language, because I also read a lot in Austria, in Germany, the Netherlands, Romania. You also, I think if you're looking at the audience when you're reading and not at a piece of paper, you can gauge how fast or how slow or how much you need to enunciate your words. And so that's just a personal thing. And sometimes it may come across as me being arrogant, but it's not. It's just my tradition and what I get energy from. That's all. Yeah.
Can we see you doing what you do?
Say again?
Can we see you doing what you do?
No, tonight, no, because there's no audience. I can only see 4 people. So, but where Dominic is sitting right now, that's one of my. I was the poet laureate of the Laden, whatever about Cincinnati. Beat that. That's awesome. That was Dominic's title. It was wonderful because that venue, Manuel, you got to come to Austria and read in that place. You haven't read anywhere unless you've read in the Latin.
I am right now, as we are speaking, I'm wondering if I haven't read there in Vienna.
You would know. Okay. You would know if you.
Yeah, probably.
Have you been to Vienna?
For what I see right now, is this like a house?
Yeah. No, it's a room. It's a living room basically, and I can show you around.
I think Dominik, I read there, and maybe you remember this.
Yeah, you were telling me this, Manuel.
I think you remember. You will remember this, Dominik. I read with my friend Francisco Mendez, who is a Mexican guitarist that was living in Vienna.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No.
So he said. No. So you asked. So what is the river in Cincinnati? And I say the Ohio River. And then you say, oh, it's the Ohio River, and then the Rhine, and we say, and then Rio Bravo from Mexico. So Paco was improvising on the guitar, and I was reading in Spanish only. And it was just a surrealist experience because nobody was understanding what I was saying. But it was that. I was there.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. You stood up and I recognized the green armchair where you're sitting.
And you know, that reminded me because I think I had shown you pictures and I think we had this conversation.
I read there once.
I think I might have been there.
It was packed.
Oh my God. I was in Vienna 2 times, but I didn't know about your place.
No, I'm telling you, they're the only one in this group.
I know. I feel so left out. This is the house.
Tanya,
left out. I don't belong here.
I remember this now. You remember the jam with Paco, Dominik.
Yeah, I remember now, but it's like it didn't occur to me at all to think that
this was like 5 years ago or more.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, we have 20 years and every Thursday. And it's been a beautiful and crazy run that I only start to reflect after this year of interval where we couldn't have the scenery, you know, that's been part and this live. And it was really like a rhythm every Thursday, people coming in from all over the world, you know, and exchanging. And there's been so much beauty. And it is truly incredible to me now that you say, I just say, you know, man, it could be any random Vienna place and club and living room. But I mean, I remember now that actually the guitar and then it was all Spanish because I love languages and so
okay, we gotta do all Korean now. Neil, come on, Neil, are you ready?
I would say we could really. I mean, like it would be great to make a tour. You know, like a poet tour. I don't know how it's. I need to get my. I just saw that I forgot to launch my cable. This is something I don't do usually on Thursdays to the computer. Otherwise, I'll be gone now in a second. But if I would be gone now, I'd say it was great. No, I get my accu. But this is an amazing story, Manuel. It's incredible. And let's talk about Korea. How could we organize launch a Korean exchange of poetry?
Oh, we could do totally easily. Yeah. That's no problem. Leo speaks Korean too.
Putting you on the spot, Neil.
Yeah, no, I don't. I speak a few sentences. Makju juseo makachukja. That's it.
Oh, that's that's no problem. We could totally connect like a Korean poets, and then we could do the readings and have a soju party and all that, right?
Yeah, Dominik, you got the right person.
and then I mean, this is I'm still stuck, but I love those coincidences in life, you know. And coincidence sounds like Cincinnati, so it's a logical effect. Coincidence. And then I love the idea of creating a bridge to maybe also like Korea. And then
I think that would be awesome. I do all the time, like in LA, like I do at the Beyond Broke. Do you know Neil Beyond Broke?
Yeah.
Los Angeles. So that we did I did East Midwest poetry reading. So Korean people and then immigrant people, we all get together, diversity, and then reading on their language, and then another language, and then just to celebrate. I think it is very important to share with your own language, because otherwise we're gonna lose our own authenticity and then originality. So I think it's so important. I think that there's just like something deep inside sharing with your own language. And then also another part is important. What is important is, even though you don't understand the other language, another language, it's very important that you pay attention and listen. I think that is the beauty, and I think that is being a human being, and then also respecting each other.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can I read you a poem in Irish?
Yes.
Because I've realized that, we've got Korean and German and Spanish and English. And I think if an Irish person is here, then you can't really not read in Irish, the Gaelic language.
Yes.
It's not my poem. And so it's one of my favorite poets in Ireland. Her name is Doireann Ní Ghríofa. And she's a wonderful poet from Cork in the south of Ireland. Okay. I think she lives in County Clare. But she's also, like, as Tara mentioned, one of these, like Manuel, like Tanya, one of these sickeningly talented people who writes and translates her own poetry. That's why I kind of like Doireann. And she's just a great wordsmith. But unless you are proficient in Irish Gaelic, you're not going to understand the Irish. It's a very short poem, and then I'll read the English. But the Irish is called Ag bhéal na huilge saoláin mé féin in áit ag an eile, which in English means, at the graveyard, I always imagine myself somewhere else. So this is the Irish version. Ag an zú I foinse, Beidir áit a bhfuil tréad seoirí teointe le na chéile. Súla an slú orthú fé spéchlí dorcha gréine. Nuair a impíonn an searach is óige a aig an airde, leanam réin a chúl agus fecam an sin é. Gólán guithe scialta go bhacháirí na Hafrica. Spéchlig sa spéir, éin an éir, huas ard, sir. At the zoo in Fota, maybe watching a huddle of zebra, as the youngest foal lifts her face to the sky. And when I follow her gaze, I too see the bird that flickers there, tilting away towards African plains, high, higher, over the trees, leaving us only this quick sky glimpse of a single swift, high, free.
Wow.
But I like the musicality of that. And like you say, you just, when you hear something in another language, you don't get it, but you listen and you think, I wish I knew what that was about.
Now that you mention this, I think in several conversations with Tara, with Tanya, with other people, I have talked about that, the misquotation of Robert Frost, when they say that poetry is what is lost in translation. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think that poetry is what survives the translation. When I read something that was written originally in another language and it still gets to me, that means that something beyond language is in language, And that goes for both the emotion and the ideas and for the sound. Yeah. Like when the poem is translated and I understand somehow, I almost understand the words, because it's a translation, it's just an approximation. I do get something in my heart from what the words say. And when I do not understand a poem and I only get the sounds, that part of poetry also gets to me. Mm-hmm. And I feel this completely abstract emotion. It's music. That's completely what it is. It's like listening to music. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that, because if we're talking about international poetry and all of this, the translation is part of this. And there is something that is untranslatable, but there is also something that is there in poetry that is beyond language. I do think that poetry is to use language to go beyond language. And And translation does that, you know.
When you read it, the original, when you landed on that last word, I thought, I really want to know what that last word is. And I felt this in such a similar way, not knowing what it meant, as I did when you said free.
Seer. Do you know the Irish American actress Saoirse Ronan?
No, I'm so bad at famous.
Okay. She's like A-list now in Hollywood. Her name is Saoirse. Nobody can pronounce it like Jay Leno. It's like, what's her name? Saoirse. Her name is Freedom. That's what it translates as freedom. Yeah. She lives in the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Learn how to say her name.
Yeah, everyone calls her Shisha, which is completely wrong.
Yeah, totally.
It's all sorts of wrong.
That is not poetry.
Nice. It's could we maybe? I mean, Tanya, do you have another piece of Korean?
Yeah, like I love to read a poem, and then I felt like I'm just torn because I wanted to dedicate like one poem called Terrace Station. Actually, at the Terrace Station, I was in Dublin. That's what I wrote. And another poem that I wanted to share, like June Snow. Let me read Like June Snow. Because you think like in June that we're not going to have snow, but actually you think like there is no snow in California, but there is the mountain, there is the snow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read English, and then it's sort of like a poetic ariska in Korean, short part of that. Like a June Snow. 4-5 north to Manhattan. So Neil, you know the 4-5 freeway in California, the Los Angeles. You are just bump to bump. You never go anywhere. You're just stuck there. Like 5 miles takes like hour and a half. So I say 4-5 north to Manhattan, New York. You play one fine day for me on the phone. Too much noise in your film studio. The silent sound of ambulance. The tea spills. A new pink scar. The phone disconnects like heaven and earth. It could be our last conversation. The weight of love, the weight of pain are the same. I lie to myself. I am fine. I am fine without you. You here, you there. Doesn't matter anymore. You didn't call last Friday. I pan-fried 12 dozen dumplings, baked 12 dozen chocolate cookies, all burnt like a taste of our first kiss. I left you, I leave you, over and over. But I cannot never leave you. Your voice wraps me in sable, in raindrops, in fire. I fall asleep on the tile, you calling my name. Words could fall from satellite, from November sky, turn lights on my eyes. I send the email. Sorry, I can't talk tomorrow or Friday. We'll try one fine day. Our love melts like a June snow. I will dry your voice, press it like a ginkgo leaf, tuck it in my suitcase. And that short size Korean, I wrote it in short form in Korean that way. 6월의 눈처럼. 405 North Freeway, 앰뷸런스 사이렌 소리에 끝내지 못한 안부 인사. 그게 우리 마지막 통화일지라도 괜찮아. 그대의 따뜻한 목소리 햇살에 말려 수트케이스에 가득 담아가. 컬른 대상당 리얼트 창을 보며 알았네. 전쟁 속 완전 파손된 스테인 글라스도 희망으로 아름답게 복원될 수 있습니다. 사랑도 고통도 똑같은 무게. 이 손가락 사이로 빠져나간 모든 후회의 시간들 내 삶의 보석이었어. 우리의 남은 사랑 6월의 눈처럼 녹아도 괜찮아. Neil, can you get the word 괜찮아? Can you get it? Do you understand?
No, honestly, my Korean is terrible. I speak pub Korean. That's it. Is there a literal translation of the word?
The 괜찮아 means it's okay. That means like it's okay. It's everything's gonna be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pub Korean is it's a pub language skills.
It's like my German skills.
Yeah, sometimes like I do like when I do the workshop, and then I just like because I think it's important if you hear the sound, like what leads to you. So I read Korean, and then like, you know, participants are like English speakers. And then I just let them say, I'm going to read a Korean poem and just write down what leads to you. What is the sounds that you hear? Or just imagine what I am trying to say in Korean. So then after that, like they share their like, you know, practice that one. And it's amazing. Some people, even though totally not know Korean, but I read it in Korean, they get it. They get the emotions. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm. Could we try it out that you read some poem and we guess what theme we have?
Oh, okay. And then this one I will do it. Oh gosh, there's so many things I love to do that. So this poem, like this is like this one I don't even have an English translation. But so then this one is I use it like the form goes like this, like I used to visualize to go that way.
So we're gonna translate it for you tonight live.
Oh, thank you so much. I needed it so badly. Please do for me, because sometimes when Manuel, do you have the same problem? I'm not problem, but like when you like because you know in Korea usually they ask a poet to write like new poems and send it to their magazines and stuff. And then it is Korean, so then I have to turn off the American mind, the English mind, and totally trying to put myself in Korean language, and then like getting back to my body to be hyunhae, to write this word. And so this poem that I was writing like a couple weeks, because I have to write like 6 poems in Korean, and which none of them like translated in English yet, because it was just so much work being Korean to write that one. Now I don't want to have like that experience again to translate in English, so I stopped. So do you do that sometimes? Sometimes I just don't have the language translated. So here you go. Thank you for doing that for me today. 여행. 하늘로 떠나지 못한 푸른 예술가 영혼들. 밤마다 유리 장식장 못 빼고 나와 노래 부르는 노란 버브 호텔에서 눈을 뜬다. 아이가 밤새 틀어놓은 보헤미안 랩소디 때문인가? 펜웨이 파크에서 열광하는 관중들의 환호성 때문인가? 아니면 밤새 내린 비 때문인가? 오래전 장내 치렀던 꿈, 땅속에 묻었던 한 줄의 시, 아직 봄을 기대하는 그대 마음에 늦어진 키스처럼 도착한다. Even though I wrote this poem in Korean, and I'm just like, oh, what a line. The last line is just killer. Oh, I reread it that one. 오래전 장내 치렀던 꿈, 땅속에 묻었던 한 줄의 시, 아직 봄을 기억하는 그대 마음에 늦어진 키스처럼 도착한다. I give you some hint.
I think that means I have eaten the plums that were in the ice box. They were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious. So sweet. So
cool. Oh, I love that. I love it. But Neil,
I'm way
so
off.
Funny. No, Neil, because why when you say plum, that is so funny. You know why? My second poem is Plum Rain. Plum Rain. Oh my God. Connection. Okay.
It's the poetic line. It's already going, you know. It's like an underground.
William Carlos Williams is always the way to
okay,
go.
1 point, Neil. 1 point for Neil.
Or any guess.
Okay, Manuel,
William Carlos Williams.
What do you got? What do you got, Manuel? What do you got for me?
I was just saying that I also thought that it was the William Carlos Williams poem. Yeah.
Oh, Tara, I think she got something.
Well, the thing is it's shaped like an asymptote, and it's putting me in the wordless place. I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm.
But it definitely felt like, and then like it changed tones halfway through.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know. I feel like it I don't know.
Okay, Dominic, your turn.
I've seen a beginning. I was thinking where to place it. You know, could it be in Korea? Could it be in a park in New York, or could it be in your own flat? You know, and then I decided maybe it was a walk in the park, and it's a certain time where just you walk through the park and then you forget time, and maybe you start in winter time and suddenly you end up at the blossoming cherry tree, and there is a pond next to it, and then you sit down at the bench, and then you meet someone you haven't seen for a long time, and then you just, in that moment, you just say, that's the killer line in the end. Whatever that was. I don't know. Just guessing.
Yeah, I love the whole guessing. And then I think like, you know, if I explain, I think that would be just, you know, lose our like fun part. So I think I just leave it mystery.
You can only explain a poem the way you explain a dream. The more you try, the further away you get. Same with pain.
Yeah. So I think like it just, you're like, oh my God, it's just amazing. Like your translation is just like, amazing. I just really cannot, just like, hold on, just okay.
But Tanya, it has love in it, right?
Oh God, yes. Just like okay, so I'm gonna answer with this. And then you will love it with the part. Because this one is like that actually I like maybe next time, part 2 coming. But like just one part, like last part was that like you very unlineable poem, buried unlineable poem, but the poem is awaking like a spring, and then come to kiss you like delay kiss. So something like that. So I now that I have a duty to translate, so but I'm gonna just like read this one poem to answer that. Mistranslation of your latest letter. You signed yours truly. The weight of language raises my heartbeat. 영원히 보고 싶은 당신에게. Yours truly translates in Korean. I am yours like the river holding down stones. Yours like the body to be born. I'm yours like hinging on the brownstone's front door. I'm always yours. No white sheets between my soul and your skin. Is that right? You could have a full me. Because we usually like yours truly, sign it in English, it's just like yours truly. But the translate in Korean, like if you sign to me yours truly in English, and then I receive it and I translate in Korean mind, it is just huge. But you could have fooled me. Would that work, right? Thank you. Translation.
Nice. That's good sounds and yeah, beautiful stories coming out of it. That's it's giving it a try just by reading between the lines. It's also an art to read between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so and it's exciting, I think, just to get the feeling about languages, and then there are a lot of ideas that we have in our minds, or at least me, like that are very much concerned. Languages are like instruments in an orchestra, and one is more the oboe or the bass, while another one is more like a flute, and the next one is like a trumpet and the violin. So it's great. And in that sense, I think it's beautiful to receive all the different languages coming in here. And now, like Manuela, I think you need to leave soon. Is it possible to get some Mexican sound? What instrument would on that metaphor? What instrument with your own language?
When you said this, yes, I don't know what exactly would be the instrument, but the same metaphor that you're using, I have used to talk about poets in general. I believe that regardless of the language, there are certain lineages of poetry. Like sometimes when I approach poetry in a foreign language, I can see who are the poets that are more alike me. Like there are certain sensibilities that go beyond languages and beyond spaces and beyond time. And you can track your lineage way back in time. Sometimes I feel that I'm a descendant of such, Chinese poet of the 5th century. Like there is this connection, and I have often said that we are like sections in a symphonic orchestra. And one of the jobs of the poet is to realize which is your instrument. And when you realize which instrument you are, you try to play that instrument the best you can. You do not try to be somebody else's voice, because they are like, there are many poets that I admire, and I know that I will never write like them, because that is not my instrument. That is not where my voice goes. And if I do that, I will be tricking myself. It would be a falsetto song, but poetry is never a falsetto. It has to be your natural voice. So if you ask me which instrument would be Mexican poetry in this, I don't know. I like to think that a guitar, because a guitar is, well, isn't it? Also, I studied classical guitar before I started writing, so I have a lot of love for the guitar. But the guitar is a very versatile instrument. It can be an orchestra instrument in the hands of Andres Segovia, and it can be a really popular instrument in the hands of a street player. It can go everywhere, and you carry it with you too. It's not an instrument that you cannot take with you like a piano. It's not an instrument that does not allow you to listen to other instruments. I like how humble and how important can the guitar be. So I would choose the guitar for me, just a classical guitar. And yes, I do have to go. I want to read just one poem, short one. before I go, because there is one thing that I believe that is important in every language and in every poet, which is silence. Silence has to be in the center of a poem. I do believe in poetry as a form of epiphany. So there is the epiphany before the poem that makes you write it. And then is the epiphany after the poem, once you got what the poem just gave you. So this very short poem is called Silentium, and it's precisely about silence. It has a small epigraph by Thomas Merton that asks, "Who are you? Whose silence are you?" And the poem says, "Not in the blank of the page, but behind the ink is the silence. It hides behind the skin. Is the underside of love, is the reverse of music. Inside the eyelids, it reveals its writing. Behind the words, within the words, it can reveal itself." Silentium. No en lo blanco de la hoja, sino detrás de la tinta está el silencio. En la otra cara de la piel está. Es el en vez del amor. Su reverso es la música. Por dentro de los párpados devela su escritura. Detrás de la palabra, en la palabra misma, puede revelarse.
I just love it. Just keep reading. In Spanish. Oh gosh, so beautiful.
It is also like a word like tinta is you know, it's like framing, like the two T's, and then there's the very strong tinta, and then the N is very like pronounced in a very like smooth way. It's like holding water between, I don't know, between two pens, or I don't know. It's great, fantastico. Can you send me this poem? And maybe I will learn it until next time in Spanish.
Until next time. Yeah, next time I will know where I'm coming when I go to.
Yeah, we have to invite you. I mean, we have to invite all of you, and it's still a very incredible.
Well, this is the thing about online.
Yes. Nice to meet you again, Dominik.
Yeah,
Manuel, before you go, plug your new book, because you have a new book.
Yes, I have a new book. It's called Thank you, Tara. It's called Translating Silence. It's called Departing Present. Lo que se irá, and it's a bilingual edition published in Cincinnati by Dos Madres Press. You can look up the website and then get the book there.
On your website? And
you can look on my website, and you can look on Dos Madres Press website.
Okay, now we have the link of your website. We have all the links on our website, so that's good to
and
know.
From there you can go, yeah.
I love that it's so new. You said the name of a previous book.
I did. I did say the name of my previous book, which is Translating Silence. Yeah, it's a different.
Which is like what we were talking about earlier, how like, you know, the thing we do, because we hold all the titles and the poems in our heads, even if we don't know we do, even if, a beautiful, beautiful book.
So yes, with Tara Storko in the back cover.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. Tara, if at least I know that one part of the book is well written, you know, it's just Tara's work.
That is, yeah.
Now, speaking of silence, I have to go. But thank you guys. And I will, when I come back home, I will watch the rest of the evening. But it was very nice to be with all of you.
Nice to meet you, Manuel.
Neil, Tara, Tanya.
Manuel, great to have met you again, and we didn't know that I mean, this is so incredible, the story. I mean, there is.
I recognize where you're sitting. I recognize that green chair, and I was like, yes, I was sitting on that green chair reading poems.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I remember that. Like we're talking about it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
funny.
I didn't exactly, because I didn't invite you. It was like Tara who just said, hey, this. It'd be great. The poet laureate of Cincinnati. That's a great title. It's a great poet. We have languages, bilingual. And I say, wow, interesting, great. I'm really excited to get to meet you. And then suddenly you come with a story. Hey, wait a minute. I've been in that room.
I was just sitting in that chair.
This is so crazy.
Yes.
I mean, 20 years, and there's been 40 Thursdays in 20 years. That's quite a bit. 5 years ago, it was you. We found out with Paco. I remember.
It was statistically it's possible to have been there without knowing. There have been so many.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, goodbye, everybody.
Manuel,
nice to see you.
Muchas gracias. Muy elegante.
Igualmente.
Gracias.
Adios.
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 What a story.
What a coincidence.
That was so amazing. Yeah.
Coincidence.
Coincidence.
But Tara, I remember the conversation. You showed the picture, and then Manuel goes I think I sit in the green chair. And then you said, if you did, you remember. And then he goes.
And I think I must have said something like that before, because we hadn't come to the conclusion that it was absolutely definite.
Yeah.
And I forgot about it until when you moved, Dominic, and he said, I think I've been in that room, which was what he said when he saw me sitting on the chair.
Oh, maybe I was there 5 years ago. That brown chair in the corner. You don't remember?
This is like a furniture showroom now, Dominic. You got to.
Yeah, that was the time when I was living in Korea and running a bar at the seaside.
You have a magical Latin.
But this is really magical, because imagine I don't know how many poets live in Cincinnati, or in Mexico, or in other languages and other countries. But then you invite and you choose anyone of your people that you know. And exactly this person has been here. This is quite, I need to sleep over that, and that's one of those beautiful, I don't know, that this is poetry in whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of a poetic moment, let's say, in this wildness of coincidence, of coincidenities, as we say. And it's interesting. So a poet laureate. Yeah. And but a poet laureate is this something? What's the history? Does this in Korea are there titles like these from cities? Is it something?
Korea, I'm not sure, but in Los Angeles, Korea, I'm not sure if they have those kind of things. But actually, when I explain about this part about the Korean poets, people really get whoa, really? The reason is the Korean that I become a poet in Korea, that you actually have to win the contest, be a poet in Korea, or you have to be nominated in great a Korean genre. Neil, you know all this because you never met the Korean poets in Korea, right? Because so what I'm trying to say, in America, if you publish your piece in one of the local newspaper and say, hey, I'm a poet, I got published, right? In Korea, no, you can't, because actually when you Google my Korean name, and then there is the poet's license, so that you got Korean poets. And then they Gyeong, Niun, Tigel, Lir, the Korean alphabet, by the alphabet. They have all the poets who got, poets license in sort of saying that they put the name. So if your name is not there, if you say you're a poet, and then they will say, let me Google you. No, you're not here. You're not a poet. So actually, it's just really important. But if you Google Tanya Kohong, no, it has to be Go Hyun-hae, Korean name. So that's the differences. So by the name, the interesting that too, for having different names, in Korea, they're still using my poet name is Go Hyun-hae, and in America, if I use Hyun-hae, then they wouldn't find. So that's another part too. So like my work feels like spread out, and then I feel like it's not in one place connected, you know. That is another part there too.
Nice.
Will you talk about the typewriter behind you, Dominik, so people watching can see this marvelous thing?
Right, exactly. Yeah. This is also like I love the idea of poet. I mean, like if you exactly for this for the idea of poetry that's been on my mind, also from the way of the impulses basically and inspirations of our talks right now. Also what Tanya says from the idea of laureate and how where you placed with the name and title and anyway, so I mean in the last month I've been reading a lot about the biography of Hans Karl Artmann, who was like one of the major poets of the 20th century of Austria, and the one who's like brought basically in the 50s the dialect into pop culture, or into like the high end of the two branches of art and language, and also the way that is referred to, and even to nowadays where people just sing in dialect. There's a genealogy basically from the time that he brought it into paper and published it, and it was written in the German speaking language and received, and so he's in 2 days he would have turned 100 years. Was born in 21 in the 14th district in Vienna, and quite an amazing inspiration to many people. And I have one project where I just basically took some time to just have talks with people who were sharing the same time in life, and maybe all the same minds and the spirits of people who were just going along with him, from other very known singers in Austria, or other poets, writers, or his wife. And then I had dinner with Rosa Artmann, his wife, widow, his lady basically, and he died 20 years ago. And she invited me to a nice schnitzel around the corner in a very old classic place, the Gasthaus Sittel it's called, next to the Gürtel, if Neil might know the area. And it's a very original, old school, traditional kind of place where you have a wine and you sit underneath a big tree, and it's a classic old school patina. And anyway, so I told her that I'm also for Saturday I'm planning to create sounds, and it will be one also an afternoon and evening with many different languages, you know, that we want to just perform, and just in the beauty of the idea that we're meeting today or tonight, you know. I don't know, Tanya, what's the time at your flat right now? What's the time?
What time is it? Oh, it's right there. 3:44 p.m.
3:44 p.m. in New York City.
Yes.
And
so you're 6 hours ahead of me.
Yeah.
It's 10:44. One time I asked a Romanian poet what time is it? And he said, there's time enough.
That's a good action. And yeah, anyway, so it's on languages. And then the other thing is I want to create the sound of a typewriter, you know, in the park, you know, just as a sound frame. And then she said, why don't you use our typewriter? So this is the original typewriter of the Artmann couple. I mean, like written by like the most important or used, you know, poet of the countryside. This is an extra special moment actually to it's a special moment to me. And it's also it's a beautiful way and poetic way to just embark into this and to the performance on Saturday, and have the original typewriter be kind of the harbor where we send out the ships, which are the notes, tones, inspiration, and the sounds that actually been there, you know, for many years, and in many stories. So this is quite exceptional.
And how amazing that you have the original typewriter. That's such an intimate object.
Yeah,
in a writer's life, like a pen or, you know, a typewriter, and that she was so generous to just let you walk out the door with it.
Yeah, it's amazing. woman full of elegance and style, and then she brought it from her room and brought it to me and then handed it out, and it was a very spontaneous idea and full of trust. So I mean, I have to keep it and always look at it and be careful. We need to I think it's another beautiful moment just to place an idea, and also like it's one of those many colors,
right?
Of performance. Whatever you put into a performance is maybe like the words that you have, the many different words that you have that you use, that you place carefully, like into like plants in a garden, or that become a poem. And I think for me, the way I do create performances, I also want to many things you don't even see, and just place and write like a wannabe poet, basically plays with different kind of stories that maybe create something that you don't naturally see, but it's placed there, and that will be one. I mean, I might even like boast with the idea that it's so
Dominik, it's gonna be on the live on Saturday. You said what time?
No, it's not really like idea to make it live. I think
like live in real life, about it, right?
Live in real life.
It's going to be real life.
Oh, not on the line.
5 to until it gets.
Oh,
started.
that would be lovely. That would be lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll try to see if someone can capture it, and then I'll share the video or something, or share the film or whatever documentation. And maybe, I don't know, I didn't think of the idea of sending it live, but maybe let me think about it if that is doable in a way. No, anyway, so this is the beautiful inspirational typewriter that creates a lot of atmosphere here in the Laden. Another aspect of poetic use. Yeah, so let's make a final. Maybe I don't know if that is idea to have a final short round of maybe poems. I mean, then.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or maybe
Tara, go ahead, Tara.
Yeah.
Oh, and Dominik, before I forget, I want to thank you for becoming partners with Writers for Democratic Action. So Dominik is a literary partner, Verein 08, and we can do events together too, and going forward in the future. So Writers for Democratic Action is an international coalition of writers for democracy. And it's writersfordemocraticaction.org. And we're holding events. We're starting a new series soon, so stay tuned. We're going to have events around democracy in the US and around the world with writers from everywhere. And we're just getting started. We're partnering with literary organizations, bookstores, publishers, writing programs, and we're basically we're building an international network of literary resistance, which is what writers do.
Oh, and thanks, Tara, to that you came up with the idea, and that for us being part of it is a very huge honor in a way, and a joy to be part of it. And let's exactly see what beautiful bridges we can build in the future,
Yeah. And the idea wasn't mine. It was Writers Against Trump first. And because I had I didn't do it on purpose, but I had started a viral poetry movement during the pandemic, International Poetry Circle, of people recording themselves reading poems. I had contacted them to say, it was originally writers recording video statements of why it was important to vote in the election last year, to increase voter turnout, to get Trump out of there. And they didn't have a Twitter at the time. And so then they invited me to do the Twitter, and then they took me in. And then now I'm a steering committee member of, we're not writers, well, we're always Writers Against Trump, but since he's out of the office, we are now Writers for Democratic Action, to do as much as we can do. With a partner in Vienna. I'm going to read the first love poem I ever wrote, which I wrote after I had a dream that I killed my partner by accident. morning love poem. Dreamt last night I fed you unknowingly something you were allergic to, and you were gone like that. You don't have even a single allergy, but still, the dream cracked. Cars nosedived off snowbanks into side streets. Sometimes dreams slip poison, make the living dead, then alive again, twirling in an unfamiliar room. It's hard to say, I need you enough. Today I did. Walked into your morning shower fully clothed. All the moments we stop ourselves just because we might feel embarrassed or impractical or get wet.
I never get tired of hearing that poem. I love it.
I never get tired of watching this.
Like this. So I think this is like a little, could be heavy poem, but I think it is my duty and responsibility to share this poem and also give honor to those who are suffering. So I wanted to share like that is like, you know, the my cover book, this is a Comfort Women, the World Still Within. And this cover is actually the Comfort Women, sexual slavery during World War II. And also this pregnant woman name is Park Yong-sim. So actually I have another picture that she witnessed that she was that pregnant woman and she died in 2006. I think it could be little heavy on the subject, but I think it's very important to witness and share the history, and we need to hear. It is really tough to share hard stuff, but I find out that even I didn't know about this subject matter before I write it, and that since I wrote and then sharing this subject, that find out a lot of people not know about this history. So I am gonna just read just a short part of this story, but I'm gonna read the epigraph. It's Comfort Women, 14 August 1991, Seoul, South Korea. A woman named Hak-sun Kim came forward to denounce the Japanese for sexual enslavement of more than 200,000 women during World War II. They were known as Wianbu in Korean and Comfort Women in English. So there is the part like Hak-sun Kim show and then why she wants to come forward and say that she was Comfort Women. But I am not going to read the whole thing, but I think it's important to read two parts. 1941, that autumn. Autumn night, Japanese soldiers wielding swords dragged me away while I was gathering pine needles that fell from my basket, filling the air with the scent of their white blood. When you scream in your dream, there's no sound. On the maru, grandma's making sompian, asking mom, is the water boiling? Will she bring pine needles before my eyeballs fall out? I feel pain there. They put a long stick between my legs. Open up, open, bakkachu senjin. They rage, spraying their sperm. The smell of a burning dog, burning life, panting, grunting on top of me. Under my blood, I am dying. 1943, Shanghai, China. One night, a soldier asked all the girls, who can do 100 men? I raised my hand. Sunja did not. The soldiers put her in boiling water, alive, and fed us. What is living? Is Sunja living in me? 1946, Jeonju, Korea. One night after liberation, I came home, short hair, not wearing hanbok, not speaking clearly. Mother hid me in the back room. At night, she took me to the well and washed me. Scars sealed with hot steel, like burnt bark, like roots of old trees, all over my body. Under the crescent glow, she smiled when she washed me. My baby, your skin is like white jade, dazzling. She bit her lower lip, washing my belly softly, but they had ripped open my womb with a baby inside. Mother made white rice and seaweed soup, put my favorite white fish on top. But mother, I can't eat flesh. That night in granary, she hanged herself, left a little bag in her room, my diary with a rice bowl. Father threw at me, waved his hand towards the door. I left at dusk. 30 years, 40 years, forever, mute, mute, mute. Bury it with me. They call me Wiambu. I had name. 1991, 3 a.m. That night, 1,000 blue stars became white butterflies, threw whipped rice paper and flew into my room. 100, 1,000 butterflies, endless white butterflies going through the web in my mouth, into my unhealed red scars, stitching one by one. Butterflies lifting me, heavier than death. Butterflies opening my bedroom door, heavier than shame. At dawn, I stand. Thank you.
Strong and heavy. And
thanks for reading that.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, when they came to announce that I was comfort woman, there was like, actually they're kidnapped and then thrown away, like 200,000 to 300,000 women. But because usually when I do the workshop and then I show all the pictures, but culturally they cannot say that I was a comfort woman. So they've been silent 46 years. And first time they came out, the Haksun Kim, there was like an interview. She was like saying, before she died, she wanted to get apologized. And so for the first time, and then the reason she was being silent for a long time, that in her interview, she said, because they said, if you say what happened, we're gonna come after you and kill you. So she was scared, right? And then if she said it, probably no one would believe her, or actually culturally, even though it happened to her, that it would be a shame to her. So, but then why she waited 46 years later? And then she said after she get older, she was no fear of the death anymore, even though they come and kill her. No fear for that. So she said, if I don't say my truth, who will? That's the reason she came. So the reason I'm saying is that after that, at the time was like 1991, about 258 women came out, and then they're the comfort women. But like now, 2011, maybe 20 women surviving right now. And then they're all 90 years old, 95, close to 100 years old. So they're very ill, and they're still waiting for the apologize. But what I'm trying to say is, what is being human? What is being human? I think that's my question.
Mm-hmm. That is a very strong and deep theme, and is Yeah, maybe also it's a poetical voice that it needs in order to what is the language that we need and what form to just reach out, and in what way. Maybe at first an emotional way, and then it becomes political, or then it becomes a matter of society. But it starts out to be just the poetical voice, and I think in that way it is legit already and important, and then going out. And I think this is the decision of the authors and maybe the first part of the way that they want to have this notification perceived basically by a society.
Yeah, I think, thank you for having this space, and then also allow me to share this poem, because it's heavy, but yet also I think it's very important. I think it's not just this matter of a subject. I think everybody who need to share of their truth, I hope that encouraged to come forward and say their truth. I think that is what's important. And then we are holding so much of our truth, not speaking out. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's a beautiful and true message. I mean, that is goes for all our entity of being that we're holding a lot inside in a way, and there is the way we see it, and then it is the poetic language that can open up, and then also maybe find the communication and find the way and the wording that follows maybe the poetic language. You come to translate this this poetic voice into something that maybe is more direct and more maybe dry, but more substance for anything that is coming to that. Yes, I mean,
got some truth for us, Neil?
Say again? Have I?
You got some truth for us?
In vino veritas, that's what I'll say. There was a long time ago in a distant galaxy, not so far away, there was a man called Dominik Nostitz. This is the product placement, who recorded a CD called Live in the Laden. It's by the Verine 08 label. Very happy with that, label 08. But there's a really, really short poem on it called Down the Melancholy Hallway.
Wow.
And I stole that line from somebody else. And so there's a bar around the corner from where Dominik is sitting right now called Das Lange. Das Lange is the old Stammlokal. It's the old place I used to go and drink. But it's the kind of place you go and look at the locals, because that's where the truth lies in their faces. The kind of people whose decisions they've made in their life have had a consequence on their face. And so I wrote this poem about one guy who I had never spoken to in my life, but he still goes in there, and I just wonder, what's his story, you know? So I wrote his story for him, because he's not going to tell me. So it's called Down the Melancholy Hallway. He drinks Spanish red wine in this small corner of Austria because it keeps the memory better than white. Takes him back to the days spent in Granada in his youth, sat on the steps of the cathedral reading Lorca. Stinted by his aloofness and masked by his mother tongue. She was there too, swishing in the breeze, like she'd just walked in off the set of Hallo Dienstman. Now he drinks in the quiet bars, the partisans of smoke in the quiet streets, frowns like the rest of them and blames Hans Moser. But he smiles when he orders a rioja. And with every venerated mouthful, she is there again, furtively walking down the steps as he reads. The moon to the east behind him, the sun to the west behind her, like two faces on parallel trains when the doors have already closed. So,
that was great.
I love it.
One day I'm going to ask that guy, like, who is she? So that's the product placement of the night. Thanks.
Yes, speaking of product placement, yeah, exactly. I mean, the sponsorship is called Poetry, International Poetry, and you are those who have received the talent to go for it, or the soul, or it's more than a talent. You know, it can be anything. You know, it's basically you are living poets and in contemporary worlds and with knowledge to the past and with a perception of the future, and that's it's beautiful just to place it down and just have received languages, wordings, your own work, insight in your work, and then also I like very much the way that we interacted, and it's inspiring and hopefully inspired also others, and it's a good yeah. It's been a good night, you know. It's been a Thursday night, and I wasn't alone here in the Laden, in the living room. I shared it with people and ideas, and it made me feel kind of like a bit of a spirit of the old days. And so with a lot of interesting interactions and sudden coincidences. And so we had Manuel Iris, poet laureate from Cincinnati. Then we had the joy to have Tanya Kohong living in New York City and LA with Korean and English poetry in writing and speaking and reciting. We have Tara Skurtu, almost a regular, you may say, you know, in the Laden. And hopefully we are open in all those walls and days and plannings that we can keep I don't know, create another whiskey and poetry night or a night on poetry, or doing something with the platform that you host and being part of the committee of Writers for Democracy, and so that's great also. And yeah, thank you for joining in with different time zones and different languages, and uniting under the idea, the umbrella of just the poetic move, basically, or the poetic life. And Neil, it's also been a great pleasure, like always. It's always great if there's a regular Laden night and there's music or we have signs or whatever is happening, and then people just come in at a certain point, you know, and then it's you feel like every Thursday is is like an ongoing sitcom for 20 years, you know, and then it's beautiful if you have the a cast that you really like, and you know, and it's like if I don't know, if Coppola is looking out for Robert De Niro or I don't know, Marlon Brando and those guys, you know, you want to work with certain people, and then I always enjoy working with Neil, and then it's always good, like on when he doesn't come asked, but just as a friend or watching out in the Laden. It's always great just if people bump in, you know, and they, as we said before, with this matter of creating atmospheres, it's also the people who bring atmosphere, you know, like languages and the reciting. So I think it's for me, it's also very haunting, the idea of poetry, because I can also place it into society and see that the way we interact, that there's a lot of poetry that we can look out for, watch out, or define. And I think this is maybe just a request to invite you in the future to keep on certain topics that we just opened up a little bit tonight and just enjoyed. And yeah, so thanks also for Mike for hosting us and joining everything here together.
Yes, thank you so much. He's our Wizard of Oz. The Oz of Zoom.
Exactly. Moose, the Zoom.
And thanks for inviting us into your living room. And thanks for showing up in the empty living room for atmosphere.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
Exactly, I like it. It's anyway, so
there.
Just give it a tone. And I say good night, and again, good night. Thanks, Manuel Iris, and thanks, Tanya, thanks, Tara, thanks, Neil, and thanks, Mike. So let's, that was the House of Hearts edition on poetry and H.C. Artmann's typewriter. And exactly, so let's kick it off and wishing a great summer to come wherever you are, and hopefully we reunite digitally and also physically at some point in the future, and create a Korean platform from Korea to Vienna to New York to Bucharest.
To the Los Angeles too. Let's do it.
Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, good night. Good night. Good night.
Not Tibuna.
Not Tibuna. Okay. All right. Thank you. Buenas noches. Servus.